Yeah.
Hey everyone, welcome back to the channel, and today I will be talking about the film I have been dying to get on here and bring you guys a review of ever since I saw it at the Toronto International Film Festival, and that of course is The Brutalist, directed by Brady Corbet, starring Adrien, Brody, Felicity Jones, Joe Alwyn, Alessandro Nivola, and Guy Pearce. And this follows a Hungarian Jewish Holocaust survivor named Laszlo Toth as he moves to Pennsylvania after the war to start his career back up in architecture. And he's commissioned by a wealthy client named Harrison Van Buren to build this building for him. And that's all I really want to say about the plot of this movie, because this film I heard rumblings about. Shout out to the Oscar expert and brother bro for putting this on people's radars as an awards contender, because I don't know if anyone was really thinking about this movie and what it could have ended up being, because Brady Corbet, of course, has been in a lot of stuff before as a younger actor, slowly made his transition into the director's chair with movies like Vox Lux, which I think a lot of people found very divisive, but I absolutely loved. I thought Natalie Portman should have been nominated and won the Oscar for Best Supporting Actress for that film. And so, naturally, I was excited to see what he was going to do next. But I don't think anyone had anticipated it to be to this level. This was probably the film I was the most excited about going into the festivals after Anora, because once the buzz came out of Venice and everyone's calling this an American masterpiece, comparing it to The Godfather and early era Francis Ford Coppola, as well as There Will Be Blood, Once Upon a Time in America, I was like, my goodness, I mean, this must be insane. And so when I finally got the ticket, shout out to Max Sloth for getting that for me and for letting me stay the night at his place the last day of the festival. Thank you. And I knew that this was going to be quite the experience. It was projected in 70mm, which honestly was the first time I've ever seen a film in 70mm, so that was pretty exciting just to be a part of that experience and have that experience going to a movie theater. And when do we ever get 3.5-hour American epics shot on 70mm? It literally never happens. I mean, I guess you could say Oppenheimer, but even with that, I mean, this is an established director, Christopher Nolan, coming in with all the resources in the world. This is coming from a guy who really didn't have that level of credibility at all before this film. And so everyone, of course, was eagerly awaiting to see what this guy would do on film with all these factors in place. And the fact that it spanned, 3 decades or more, starting from the 40s and going all the way through to almost the end of the 1900s. And one thing I'll say right off the bat is you can feel the epicness, the majestic nature of the scope of this film. Like, there's literally a shot at the beginning of this movie where it's just basically a bus going down a road, and it's like the POV of the bus just rolling down the highway, and I'm like, this is cinema. Like, everybody could feel it in the room. It was so palpable, and my goodness, we'll get into Lowell Crowley's cinematography in a little bit, but this movie is just unbelievably epic in all the best ways possible. It really is very reminiscent of all those classics I mentioned, specifically There Will Be Blood, and I really do think this is the last time since There Will Be Blood that we have seen something on both that level of technical and thematic scale. And it is just so much to take in all at once. That is most certainly a fact. Right from the beginning scene, which I did find a little hard to see what was going on, and perhaps that was the point, but my goodness, it's just unbelievably cinematic right from the first few minutes of this movie when Adrien Brody's Laszlo Toth walks out and sees the Empire State Building, and the camera's like tilting on the Empire State Building, and it's just like, okay, you're in for quite a movie right away. And obviously quite a interesting breakdown of the American dream and what goes along with it. This honestly is the first time I've really been openly talking about this movie, and of course I'm not going to spoil this because this doesn't even come out in limited release until like right before Christmas, so I would hate to give away any of the secrets and mysteries that lie within the Brutalist itself, because there's so much going on in this film, and so much that really you don't realize until the eventual conclusion of this narrative. And so I would hate to give that away at all, but I definitely do want to talk about some of the ideas in this film that are present, because this is definitely one of those movies where it left me with a lot to think about once it concluded. Now, I'm going to be honest, this was an 8 o'clock screening on a Tuesday night. I hadn't had a whole lot of sleep beforehand, and I had my contacts in. So the first half of the movie does feel very slow, and I think that's by design, of course, so I'm not necessarily knocking that, but it definitely felt like there wasn't a whole lot of conflict going on in the first half of this film. And so, once we rolled into the second act, I was really starting to get a little tired. I literally had to take my contacts out in the theater and put my glasses in. And I'm very glad I did, because then something happens in the second act which just completely shocked me, and I did not see coming at all. Well, at least I didn't think so. And then it just continuously got crazier and crazier until it reached its final conclusion, where there was this one moment where you realize what this whole narrative built up to, and it was like, pfft, and it just hit me like a ton of bricks, and my jaw was like literally left on the floor. Like, this is an unbelievable thematic achievement in how it writes these characters and how it slowly reveals its meaning throughout this 3.5-hour runtime, to the point that it really does feel so earned by the end of this narrative. And I really don't understand, these stupid people complaining about the length of this movie. Like, this is what him and his partner Mona Festival wrote from top to bottom. Everything on the page went to the screen, as he said during the Q&A after this movie. So I really don't think that length should be a problem. If you need that much time to tell your story, I certainly think it is more than warranted. And I think, for the most part, the Brutalist absolutely earns this. And my goodness, let's talk about, the achievement in directing here. I mean, Brady Corbet, he literally was saying how he poured 7 years of his life into this movie, and it absolutely shows. The scope of this film is just so unbelievable, and harkens back to a lot of those films, like I said, with, directors like Francis Ford Coppola, Sergio Leone, Paul Thomas Anderson. Like, that is very lofty company to put anybody into, but I really do think that Brady Corbet is absolutely going to be nominated for Best Director, if not win. Of course, I still think Denis Villeneuve should get the attention for Dune Part 2, but my goodness, what he does here is just an unbelievably committed vision from top to bottom, and just feels so cinematic in a way that a lot of films that we have seen recently haven't. And my goodness, he seems like just like the most sincere guy in the world. I got the opportunity to meet him after the screening, and something he was saying to us in the Q&A was that apparently this movie was shot in like 33 days. And you're watching, you're like, what? Like, there's so many massive architectural structures that must have had so much pre-production and planning to go into them, that it just absolutely, like, blew my mind how anyone could accomplish this in such a short period of time. And I literally, the first thing I went up to him, I said, Brady, I'm like, how the fuck do you shoot this in 33 days? And you could tell he was just like, oh man. Like, he was wiped out from this movie. But yet again, blood, sweat, and tears were poured into the Brutalist, and it shows in every single frame, and I really can't commend him enough on the job that he did, and also just what a nice fellow he is. I absolutely love that man, and after this I cannot wait to see what he does next, because if he's going to make movies on this scale, or at least, something to this, kind of thematic level, I really am down for everything going forward in the future. For everything I've seen from him, he is 2 for 2 for me, and really can't wait to see what he does next, and I can't wait to see how this plays out in award seasons, but we'll get into that in a little bit. And I suppose that kind of rolls into the performances in this movie, which are unbelievable. Look, I mean, everybody has been talking about him since this premiered at Venice, and rightfully so, because look, I've been saying for years, I mean, when I saw The French Dispatch, which was one of my favorite movies from 2021, if you remember, when I saw Adrien Brody in that, I was like, I love this guy. He is such a great actor. Why isn't he in more movies? Like, more great movies? Because, of course, he works with Wes Anderson a lot. But after the 2000s, he wasn't appearing as in many great movies as he had earlier in his career that delivered on the promise that he gave in his Oscar-winning performance in The Pianist. And some people have said his performance in this film is even better. But my goodness, regardless of whether I agree with that or not, Adrien Brody is unbelievable in this movie. Like, this is one of the best performances we've seen in a while. And certainly from him, this is an extremely exacting, emotionally tolling role that just reaches so many different emotional heights. He's very subdued for a lot of the film, but he also gets to yell, he also gets to cry, and he also has a very specific Hungarian accent that you would not be able to tell that it was an American doing this. Like, Adrien Brody is fucking magnificent in this, and I find it really hard that anybody is going to win the Oscar for Best Actor over Adrien Brody next year. Like, it's kind of amazing that over 20 years after his first and only nomination for The Pianist, which he won, he is probably going to win his second Oscar. And that really just, I feel so gratified and fulfilled for saying that Adrien Brody is so great, because he has finally delivered on that promise that he showed over 20 years ago. And I really do think that this is going to win him his second Academy Award. It's really hard to imagine anyone else winning, and I think he is that great in the film. But I also have to say that about Felicity Jones, who plays his wife in this movie, who appears in the latter half of the film, but I have never seen her better in anything. And once you realize her importance to the story, but of course once she appears on screen, she is so magnetic and captivating that you can't take your eyes off of her, especially near the end of this movie. My goodness, she goes there. And I really think between the two of them, this is some of the greatest acting you will see all year. I think her performance is probably my favorite supporting performance I've seen this year. And so I'm kind of rooting for her to win the Oscar right now. Don't know if she will, because that conversation still hasn't been completely settled, and I haven't seen a lot of the other contenders in that category. But man, if she wins the Oscar for this, I'd be more than glad to see that, because Felicity Jones gives a career best performance here. And then of course there's Guy Pearce as Harrison Van Buren, who a lot of people have been really taking to in this movie, and I think he is really good. He will get his first Oscar nomination for this, I don't doubt that at all, but I'm not as in love with the performance as much as some other people are. Certainly not to the same level as Adrien Brody and Felicity Jones, but man, he is deceptively funny in this, and really gets a lot of big laughs from the audience. A very unpredictable performance in a lot of ways. Has some really, really great scenes between him and Adrien Brody, which I thought were some of the best moments in the entire film. But this character also has a really, really dark edge to him that says a lot about the thematics of this film. And I'll leave it at that, because I think it's something that you really have to experience for yourself. But yeah, I definitely think he's, someone who's never been nominated. This is a big role for him, and I think he's finally going to get his first Oscar nomination for this. So congratulations, early congratulations for Guy Pearce there. I just think this trio is just magnificent altogether. But so many other great performances too. Joe Alwyn is really great, some of the best work I've seen from him. And yeah, so I really do think that You have to see this to believe it. And of course I have to talk about Low Crawley cinematography, because this is just quite a spectacular achievement within of itself. This honestly could win cinematography. I still think that Dune Part 2 is one of the best shot movies of all time, but I really do think the Academy will honor something like this with the 70mm, the historical angle, all that, just the majestic vision that is captured on screen through Corbet's direction and Crawley's cinematography. I definitely think this has a very good shot at winning. You could also say the same thing about Daniel Blumberg's score, which I don't know, I have to see it again, but it might be my favorite score of the entire year. It is so wistful and thematic and motif-driven. It's one of those scores that just soars to such thrilling heights that you'll never forget it once you hear it in the film, and the impact that it leaves on the narrative at all the best moments. This is definitely going to win the Oscar for Best Original Score. I am calling that much right now, and it would be very, very well deserved. And the production design too, like I said, I mean, with Toff being an architect, you get these amazing constructions throughout the movie that are just so pitch perfect when it comes to the details in the frame, but just so massive. And it is just unbelievable that not only was this shot in 33 days, but it was done on a budget of less than $10 million, which really just makes me respect Brady so much more, because this is just, I don't know how anyone pulls this off. Like, it is just unbelievable commitment to the craft. But on top of that, the themes that go along with it, you know, how immigrants come to this country to find a new life, but end up basically, I would say, being used by the society that they're supposed to find their new way in. This film is an absolutely vicious takedown of the American dream and what it means to those who come here and try to find a new life, to only find themselves being used by the people in power. It's still such a relevant piece of commentary on the fabric of American society and capitalism more than anything, and I really do think it is going to strike quite a chord with a lot of people because of that. And I think that's really how it affected me. And it's a very honest and realistic take on it too, which is something I more than appreciate, and I think is the reason I certainly have not been able to stop thinking about how great the thematics of this film are, and how much I want to revisit it and see what this story has to say, knowing how all the pieces fall into place afterwards. And I think on that note, it's very similar like how I felt about Zone of Interest when I got out of that at TIFF last year, and I just wanted to talk to people about it and have a very intellectual discussion, because that's really what's going to happen with The Brutalist. Like, this is not for just a casual moviegoer. This is a very emotionally and intellectually complex movie that goes to some very dark and harrowing places, but also presents them in such a splendor that you can't, turn your eyes away from. I really, really loved much of this movie. I think my big thing, though, because obviously, as he said, everything that was in the script went to the screen, but I feel like some of the characters don't really have any definite conclusion, and you really don't even have any idea of what happened to them. And there's just some other scenes that I don't really think necessarily tie into the whole of this narrative by the end of it, that just maybe felt a little unnecessary from my perspective. But I could watch it again and some of those concerns can be alleviated. I don't think they will evaporate entirely for me, but on first watch, it was definitely something I noticed. But even so, I think this is just an unbelievable cinematic achievement like no other. I think that this is going to sweep up at the Oscars. I think this could win Best Picture, but at the very least, I think it has a very strong chance of winning Best Director, Best Actor, Best Supporting Actress, Best Cinematography, Best Score, Best Film Editing. I mean, yeah, so if I'm saying all that, it definitely sounds like it could be in the conversation to win Best Picture, but we'll really have to see how A24 handles the release and campaign of this movie, because Sing Sing they really dropped the ball on, and I don't think they're going to do the same for The Brutalist. I think that this is their horse in the Oscar race this year that they're going to place all their bets on. But, you know, it's also one of those things where it's going to be a little bit inaccessible to people, I think, just in regards to as many people getting a chance to see it. But I think all those who will see it will be unbelievably challenged and provoked in all the best ways possible and just bowled over by the amazing filmmaking achievement that is The Brutalist. So as of now, I'm going to give The Brutalist an 8.5 out of 10, a very strong one at that. I just think there's some things that will play better on rewatch when I'm certainly not deprived of sleep by any means and know what I'm looking for this time, because it's going to hit so much harder. I can already feel it. This could end up being one of my favorite movies of the year in the future, so don't be surprised if it does eventually end up in my top 10 list, but that is to be determined, obviously. And yeah, you guys should see this as soon as it comes out. If you're in the city, please go see this in theaters, and please go see it in 70mm if you get the chance, because this is one of those movies that you're not going to want to miss. It is one of the most essential cinematic experiences of the entire year, and definitely one of those movies that I think is going to be talked about as a modern classic in years and years to come. So yeah, guys, if you saw The Brutalist at any of the film festivals, let me know what you thought about it down in the comments below. Please smash the like button, subscribe to this channel. Definitely going to still have a lot more TIFF reviews coming out, but there's still so many great movies coming out that I haven't gotten to, like My Old Ass, which I really, really want to talk about next, and so many other movies, like How to Make Millions Before Grandma Dies. I mean, this year has just been insane, and I'm going to do my best to try to catch up on all these reviews within due time. So please look forward to that and so much more, and I will talk to you guys very soon.